Trump, banned from election. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I've explained in the past that Donald Trump, like many politicians, is a narcissist, and his categorization is that of upper lesser type B. He's bold, he's brash, he's belligerent, and he boasts. It's his way or the highway. He's strong, you're weak. He's right, you're wrong. He doesn't operate with a facade. He calls it as it is. This makes him something of a Marmite character. The fact that he doesn't come from a political dynasty, that he isn't part of the technocratic elite, is refreshing to many. The fact that he calls it as he sees it, doesn't mess around with spin, is also something that appeals to many individuals. The fact that he has sought to take on the establishment, to drain the swamp, again resonates with many individuals, and the fact that he is business-orientated is something also that has pleased many people. Conversely, there are those that find him to be the antithesis of a statesman, that they find him crass, that they find his behaviours are ones which demeans the office in which he once held and for which he seeks to run again. And it is now the case that a slight obstacle has been placed in Trump's way as a consequence of a ruling in the Colorado Supreme Court. The Times reports via David Charter, Donald Trump ineligible to run for U.S. President, Colorado Court declares. Colorado's Supreme Court has banned Donald Trump from appearing on the state's primary election ballot paper after ruling that he engaged in an insurrection by stoking the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. It makes Trump the first presidential candidate in U.S. history to be deemed ineligible by a state to run for the White House under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that bars officials who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding office. Thus, there has been an application of the law as the Colorado court sees it, utilizing the 14th Amendment. While the ruling applies to the primary vote in March, if it stands, it would also apply to the presidential election in November. The close decision by a vote of 4-3 judges, which applies only to Colorado, is certain to be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court by the Trump campaign, which has been fighting similar moves in several other states, including Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, and New Hampshire. The Colorado ruling assesses the events of January 6 to be an insurrection and that Trump took part. Of course, that provides two potential avenues with regard to appeal, to suggest that it was not an insurrection within the ordinary meaning of the word, and that he didn't actually take a part in it. We do not reach these conclusions lightly, the majority opinion of the judges states. We are mindful of the magnitude and weight of the questions now before us. We are likewise mindful of our solemn duty to apply the law without fear or favour, and without being swayed by public reaction to the decisions that the law mandates we reach. The court stayed its ruling until January the 4th to give the Supreme Court time to weigh in. Colorado's presidential primary ballot must be set by January the 5th because voting papers start being posted to military and overseas voters on January the 20th, before the primary on March the 5th. This decision, of course, is coming from justices which are in a safe democratic state, and that all 7 are Democrats. So in some respects, it's not such a surprise that such a ruling was made. Furthermore, I don't doubt that it will be swiftly overturned in the US Supreme Court, as Trump, as you would expect, has ensured that his people are in place within that Supreme Court, that he stuffed them with his relevant supporters. An understandable step that any individual would take. The fact is that this amounts to a threat to control. He is campaigning to be president again in the 2024 election. And this ruling by Colorado amounts to a threat to control. Predictably, that threat has to be nullified, and that has resulted in a response from the Trump campaign that called the court decision flawed and undemocratic, and confirmed they would appeal against it. The Colorado Supreme Court issued a completely flawed decision tonight, and we will swiftly file an appeal to the United States Supreme Court and a concurrent request for a stay of this deeply undemocratic decision, the campaign said. Thus, there is a response. We haven't necessarily heard from Donald Trump himself in relation to this. Naturally, he would use similar language, and to do so robust. The case was brought by a liberal activist group based in Washington, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, which sued Jenna Griswold, the Colorado Secretary of State, on behalf of a group of Colorado Republican and unaffiliated voters. They argued that the former president should not be allowed on the state's presidential primary ballot because of his role in the January the 6th attack. Thus, this is a threat to his control, and it will be nullified by the response that was issued by the Trump campaign, and the threat to control will then hang around until such time as a successful appeal is achieved. That with Colorado making this decision to try and prevent Trump being voted in Colorado as a presidential candidate and thereafter in the presidential election, this will manifest as a repeated threat to control until such time as it is overturned and therefore nullified. The fact is, Trump maintains a significant lead, and therefore he will draw comfort from that, but in the sense of, this is a lead that's entirely apt for me because I am the best. He's polling at 62.7% and is some way ahead of his rivals. Ron DeSantis is polling at 12%. Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, and Trump's UN ambassador in 2017-2018, is polling at 10.9%. Vivek Ramaswamy is polling at 4.1%. He's a biotech millionaire on the hard right, and Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey from 2010 to 2018, is polling at 3.1%. Thus, his closest rival is Ron DeSantis, who is some 50 percentage points behind him. It's clear that Trump will be the relevant Republican candidate for the next presidential election and stands a good chance of winning. The fact that he's so far ahead validates his own superiority in his mind, but also the fact that he has that lead doesn't diminish the effect of the decision in threatening control for an upper lesser type B. A different type of narcissist would think to themselves, well, I'm so far ahead, I can be relaxed about this. Even if Colorado weren't allowed to vote in relation to me, I'd still succeed. But with Trump, he's more of a pugilist, and notwithstanding his substantial lead, that will actually cause him to think, I need to put these people in their place. They need to understand that I am the Donald, that they are wrong, that this is politically motivated, of which it seems to me there is some substance, that more and more there is evidence that supports the suggestion that there is a politically motivated campaign to repeatedly smear Trump in order to try and stop him running as a consequence of his evident popularity. The fact is, the decision of itself is a threat to control. Trump would have experienced ignition of fury on hearing the news, and then have ensured that instructions were given for an immediate appeal to be shaped up and lodged so that this threat to control can be nullified. That's then set in motion. With his unshakable belief in himself, he will also believe that the Supreme Court will overturn this decision, and therefore the outcome from Colorado is but a brief hiccup on his march, as he will see it, back to the White House. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.